Shall we begin? Let's begin now. Let's begin now.
This is not a drill.
Repeat, this is not a drill.
Is that all you got?
Let's begin now.
What up? Oh, for sure.
Hi everyone, how are you all?
I'm back again. It's Tuesday evening. I wasn't due to go live tonight, but I thought I will do because there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about that came up today. And I thought I could always do the little videos and the videos I need to clip up tomorrow. Hello everybody in the chat, how are you? Hello Anthony and Valorous and Ozwhistles. Hi Ozwhistles, how are you? Long time no speak, my friend. Thank you, Jen Jackson. Jean Jackson, thank you very much. That's very kind of you, £5 in the super chat. You can send me super chats and I will read them out, or you could send it direct to my paypal.me FJ Supplies with a message, and I'll read that out tonight as well. Thank you very much, much appreciated. Here's the cup of coffee that I just bought. I'm not waiting half an hour again, says Valorous. you won't have to wait half an hour again. I just when I go live, you'll get 5 minutes notice. That's all it is. I need to send people out notifications, don't I? Sign up to the mailing list. If you want to sign up to the mailing list, I will make sure that I send out a notification an hour before I go live in future. How's that? Yeah, go to the website, sign up to the mailing list. Please, yeah, support independent media if you can. Right, I've got a few things I want to talk about tonight, so I'm just going to get into it. I say quite often that when you're listening to the media, it's often not what they say that you need to concentrate on, but what they don't say. Because there's a big furore at the moment in the media. It's all over Twitter. It's all over their websites over something that Boris Johnson said yesterday when he was talking about Keir Starmer just after that report on his parties came out. This is what he said. He invoked Jimmy Savile in this little clip, but he also said that Keir Starmer was too busy prosecuting journalists. Listen to what he said.
This leader of the opposition, a former director of public prosecutions, Mr. Speaker, so he spent most of his time prosecuting journalists and failing to prosecute Jimmy Savile, as far as I can make out, Mr. Speaker.
So, failing to prosecute journalists and failing to prosecute Jimmy Savile. Now, you could argue, all right, yeah, you could argue the Jimmy Savile thing with him, and we're going to get into that in a minute because everybody's come out and fact-checked that statement, but they've all ignored the other statement he made. They've all ignored the fact that he, in a moment of anger and desperation, lashed out. And although he said the Jimmy Savile thing, which was a stretch, he also said the prosecuting journalists. And nobody is concentrating on that in the media at all. It's really quite remarkable. This is the Independent. I said Boris Johnson's Jimmy Savile jab at Keir Starmer branded a disgrace. And they talk in depth in here about how he's being branded a disgrace for invoking Jimmy Savile when he was reaching out and attacking Keir Starmer, trying to deflect away from this report. But at no stage in their article do they mention the fact that he said that he's prosecuted journalists as well. They didn't mention that at all. Why not? Here's the Mirror. Boris Johnson's disgusting false Jimmy Savile slur blasted by Keir Starmer. So Keir Starmer's gone on everywhere and said, "Oh, this is terrible. It's terrible to the, it's a disgrace to the memory of the people that Jimmy Savile smeared on Schumann, etc., etc." And you could argue, yeah, okay, that Boris is lashing out there, and that's really, low of him to do that. You could argue, well, he's got a point. Keir was head of the CPS at the time. Well, Keir was head of the CPS, and we'll get into it. This again, in the Mirror, is their article, and at no point in their article do they talk about... I mean, remember, these are journalists that are writing this stuff. They haven't mentioned the fact that Boris Johnson, lashing out in desperation and anger there at Keir Starmer, actually had a big nugget of truth. This is an actual big punch that he's laid on Keir Starmer. And they're running interference for him. You have to ask, why are they doing it? Here's The Guardian. The Speaker, they're talking about how the Speaker has rebuked Boris Johnson for the remarks on Starmer and Savile. Again, nowhere in The Guardian, you have to keep reading, I won't be doing that. Nowhere in The Guardian's article were they talking about the fact that Boris Johnson there attacked Keir for going after journalists. Why not? Why have they totally ignored that part of the accusation that Boris has made? Why? It's a mystery. But people have come out and said that no, this is wrong. Let's just deal with the Jimmy Savile thing because they've said it's not true. Keir Starmer had nothing to do with the decisions taken. This is he was chief prosecutor at the time, so he's come out for his defence. There's been fact checks all over the shop from Reuters. Here, Reuters again. They don't fact check the attack Boris made on the journalist bit. They don't fact check that at all. They just fact check the Jimmy Savile thing and just say, oh, it's Full Fact have done the same thing. So they've fact checked it as well. Keir Starmer was head of the CPS, they say, when the decision was made not to prosecute Jimmy Savile, but he was not the reviewing lawyer for the case. He was, however, Keir Starmer, head of the CPS when Julian Assange was, well, he had to seek asylum inside the Ecuadorian embassy. The CPS, when Keir Starmer was head, appealed a decision from a lower court to release Assange on bail. He appealed it. They appealed it. Starmer then advised lawyers from Sweden not to question Assange in Britain, extending the case even further. And leaked emails show that when they expressed doubts about the case, Sweden themselves expressed doubts about the case. Starmer's office replied, "Don't you dare get cold feet." Julian Assange is a journalist. They're not mentioning this in all of their articles, are they? Not mentioning that at all. Here's the Telegraph. Boris Johnson in the dock over claim that Keir Starmer failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile. Again, they haven't said anything about the jibe he said about prosecuting journalists. Dominic Raab's come out and obviously of talking about him. And he said you're talking about the comment made about prosecuting journalists and not prosecuting Jimmy Savile. So the only time the Telegraph bring up that is when Dominic Raab is bringing it up. And they're just repeating what he said. Daily Mail, same thing. Again, they do the same thing. Again, they don't talk about the fact that Boris Johnson's attacked him there over him prosecuting journalists, and the journalists have said nothing about that at all and are just concentrating on the Jimmy Savile nonsense. The only mention I could find in all of the media that actually did talk about that claim was in The Spectator, of all places, Where's this person? Who was it? Steerpike. Whoever Steerpike is. They say Boris may have had a point about Keir Starmer locking up journalists. He was DPP when dozens were first arrested as part of Operation Elveden. Well, this is the only other thing he could be talking about, really, Boris Johnson. Because Keir Starmer did go after journalists as part of Operation Elveden when he was head of the CPS. This is from The Guardian at the time. It's actually 5 years ago when the report came out about Operation Elveden. It was a massive investigation when Keir Starmer was head of the CPS by the Metropolitan Police. And as you can see there, 200,000 emails were reviewed. There were 400 victims. And it was all about journalists. And a few journalists, I think there were 30 or so, we'll get to that in a second, who were bribing officials and bribing people in power for information. And they went after the journalists, as well as the people who were being the corrupt officials. And we did go to prison. Not the journalists, though, but Keir Starmer did go after them. This is from Press Gazette. It's the only other thing he could really be talking about, Boris Johnson could, as far as I'm aware. It's the only other thing he could talk about. It's either Assange or this. Former Director of Prosecution, this is from Press Gazette, Keir Starmer declines to apologise over Operation Elveden role. Former Director of Prosecutions Keir Starmer has declined to apologise or comment on his role in the prosecution of 34 journalists under Operation Elveden. The Labour MP, well, he's obviously, this is a while ago, this is 5 or 6 years ago this was written, and he's leader of the opposition at the moment. He's not leader of the opposition, he's the leader of Labour. Leader of the opposition is Marcus Rashford. The Labour politician that doesn't the Labour MP and Shadow Secretary for exiting the European. Okay, he was quizzed about his responsibility for Operation Elveden by Robert Peston on ITV. This is going back to like I say 2016. I haven't got that clip, but he said he said, well, most of the prosecutions took place when I ceased to be DPP. I'm not the DPP. I didn't handle those cases, and it's really not for me to comment on them. Well, I mean, that's a pretty big investigation, isn't it? I mean, if he's not head of the CPP, and if he's head of the CPP and that's going on, okay. He also said, I obviously have not had anything to do with those cases for 3 years now, so I'm not in a position to comment one way or the other. Starmer was DPP when 30 of the 34 journalists arrested and or charged under Operation Elveden were first arrested or questioned. Most of those worked for The Sun. Last week's, this is obviously a while ago this article was from, Sun reporter Anthony France won an appeal against his conviction, meaning that Operation Elveden itself achieved no convictions for journalists. Former News of the World and Mirror journalist Dan Evans, arrested under Operation Wheating, also admitted to an Operation Elveden offence. That's payments to public officials, bribing them. Many of the arrested Operation Elveden journalists spent years on police bail, though. Some careers have never recovered. At least 2 attempted to commit suicide because of the strain prosecutions placed them under. This is kind of like an ethical question, isn't it? Should journalists be allowed to do this? Well, clearly they are not in the eyes of the law. And Keir Starmer went after them as a result of them bribing these officials. The officials got done as well. I think it was £300,000 in total they were bribed within this Operation Elveden, and some of them, many of them, went to prison. But the ironic thing about this is Keir Starmer then, after all this happened, came out and campaigned against prosecuting those journalists. citing that they should be able to have a public interest defence. Again, this is from the same time. Tory MPs accused former Chief Prosecutor Sir Keir Starmer of a legal U-turn on legal action against journalists. This is, like I say, he wanted a new public interest defence for journalists facing charges on bribing officials after he left the CPS, where they prosecuted 34 journalists, getting no convictions, but some of them ended up committing suicide. So Boris Johnson was either talking about them, these journalists that Keir Starmer's office prosecuted, or he was talking about Julian Assange. In which case I would say, well, you know, stop using Julian Assange as a political football and grow a pair and tell America to F off, Boris. You know? I'm not on his side in this. I'm not pro-Boris. Don't think that. But it is interesting what the media won't talk about and what they will. And it's interesting that this stuff on these parties is coming out now, isn't it? When I hear some of the people in media were at some of those parties. So journalists, yet again, aren't standing up for journalists. You'd think they would be all over that. Now we're gonna jump all over the Jimmy Savile thing. Why? Well, you know, it'll get clicks, you see. And those clicks with the Jimmy Savile in the headline, that'll send lots of advertising. And that's their model. That's the media's model. Their model is not to tell you what's important. Their model is not to say, oh, come on, this is nonsense. Him bringing up the Jimmy Savile thing, okay, yeah, it's a smear. But the journalist thing he's got a point on. You know, that wouldn't that wouldn't get as many clicks, would it? So instead, they just don't give a shit about their own profession, yet again. When I was outside the Royal Courts of Justice the other week at the Assange hearing, they were nowhere to be seen. These journalists, they were nowhere to be seen. In fact, I even recorded this.
We see a rare sight. The sight of an actual journalist in the centre of London. Who cares? Isn't that incredible? Have you got anything to say today?
Well, I just say it is a rare occasion indeed. You're absolutely right. Where are other journalists? They're never here.
It's a good question, isn't it?
It's a good question.
It's a mystery. Yeah.
They're never there. Biggest case of press freedom and journalism in the history of ever. And they're never there. Never. She's an actual journalist. Works for Russian TV. Shadia Edwards-Darshti. And she's great. It is incredible to me that they... it's incredible to me that they have gotten away with this, seemingly, the media have. Although I'm going to come to a story in a minute which will probably talk about how they are really in decline. So maybe they're really in decline. They really are. And maybe they know it. I mean, you would think, wouldn't you, as journalists, that they would be all over that. The Prime Minister going after the leader of the opposition for prosecuting journalists. You would think they would be all over it, but no, he mentioned Jimmy Savile. So, you know, that takes precedence over everything. It sounded like David Attenborough. Yeah, that was what I was going for, Darren. Okay. That is all of that done. Oh no, that is not. The one, strangely enough, the only outlet that I could find that actually did talk about the other thing that Boris brought up there in his attack on Keir Starmer was the BBC. This is just incredible to me. All of the media, all of the media out there. Well, I mean, I suppose the BBC are not selling advertising, are they? But they're the only outlet I could find that did mention. Find it. That did mention Boris's other statement. Where is it? We have a. I think they've changed this. I think they have changed this because it was there earlier. They did say that they have asked, the BBC have asked Downing Street. It did say earlier that the BBC had asked Downing Street. It says here for the Prime Minister's claim, but yeah, they've changed this. The BBC have. My gosh, they got it right and then changed it. They did say for evidence for the Prime Minister's claim about journalists. They did say that we have asked Downing Street for evidence of for who they were, which journalists they were talking about, but they've took that out in an edit of it as this has gone on. It was there, I assure you, when I checked this earlier. So the only outlet that did actually mention the fact that, oh yeah, because Keir Starmer, who was it that did ask, who was he talking about there with the journalists? Yeah, they changed it in their edit. So even when they got it right, they decided to go, oh no, we'll get it wrong after all. Unbelievable. Right, This is one of my favourite stories. So this is one of my favourite stories. Like, for a long time, I've got to be honest, because Joe Rogan is in the news and they just can't stop talking about him. They are desperate, it seems, to get him cancelled. Absolutely desperate. This is from the Associated Press. This is the latest. You might remember that guy there, that aging rocker, Neil Young, who I didn't know. I didn't know who he was. I thought they were talking about Paul Young, about, doing it for the love of the common people. And I used to love that, actually, when I was a kid. But no, it was somebody else. And apparently he did loads of anti-establishment songs. And now his back catalogue, his music is owned by BlackRock. That's who owns his music. BlackRock. So he threatened to pull his stuff from Spotify over what he said was misinformation on the Joe Rogan podcast. Okay, first of all, the Joe Rogan podcast is a guy having a conversation with other people with another guy doing the technical stuff. And that's it. That's it. It's somebody sitting down having a conversation with other people at length for 3-4 hours and doing it 3-4 times a week, and has been doing it for years, to the fact that I think he's done like 1,600 podcasts now or something like that. It's brilliant. It's everything that the news isn't. It's nuanced, it's funny, it covers a wide range of subjects. He does things with a curious nature. He's totally unprepared, so he just asks stupid questions that the layman will ask. It's brilliant is what it is. And as a result of just this childish curiosity I suppose, and the result of him, being honest with his viewers and saying, well, when I got something wrong, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. He's absolutely wiping the floor with the cable news and the news media. 11 million downloads they're saying he's getting per episode. 11 million. This guy was getting 6 million per month. And he gives Spotify an ultimatum saying, you know, either it's a PR stunt. It got him in the it got people talking. Like I say, I didn't know who he was. I know who he is now. You know? And there's rumours that he's one of the biggest arseholes that you could possibly imagine. So he pulls his music. Joni Mitchell pulls his music as well. Joni Mitchell. For medical misinformation. How often have... I mean, science changes. When people say trust the science changes. You know, and science is all about asking questions. And the big point about the scientific method is you approach it with a high level, approach anything or any statement that has been made with a high level of skepticism. That's the way the scientific method is done and has been done for centuries. You know, and certain things that we know that are facts now, if you would have said that a year ago, you would have lost your YouTube channel. So things change. And like I say, he's done 1,500 podcasts or more, hours and hours and hours at length. And people are picking on one or two things that he said and saying that he's a purveyor of misinformation. I just want to get to something else because there's something else I thought I'd added this clip. I thought I'd added it in there, but I didn't. Because Joni Mitchell has removed her stuff from Spotify now as well. And brilliantly, and I got this the wrong way round when I heard about this, brilliantly, James Blunt, as a result of this, said if Spotify doesn't immediately remove Joe Rogan, he's going to release new music on the platform, which I just think he's brilliant. If you don't follow him on Twitter, please go and follow him. Whether you like his music or not, he's one of the funniest people. I actually thought that he was going to pull his music as well, and I had a good 4 hours throughout my day yesterday where I didn't like James Blunt. I was like, you know, broke the habit of a lifetime. But fortunately, I got it the wrong way around, and James Blunt, even if Joe Rogan is spreading misinformation, why do you want to cancel him? Well, obviously this has got it's having a massive effect on them, isn't it? You know, they would kill for his numbers, wouldn't they? Well, like I say, he's been in the news for the last few days, and today the BBC have decided to do a fact check on him because, you know, he's so popular and he's so dangerous. Now, I'm going to really quickly skip through this. It's just as you would expect. Joe Rogan has been criticised for helping spread misinformation on his podcast. By who? All right, we'll get to that. Spotify reportedly paid $100 million for 2020 for rights for Joe Rogan Experience, which is the streaming service's top podcast. It is reportedly downloaded almost 200 million times a month. That's huge, isn't it? 200 million downloads a month. Wow. On the show, the US broadcaster hosts a wide variety of guests who discuss their views on a wide range of topics. But some episodes have featured false and misleading claims. Here are 4 of them fact checked. So the BBC an organisation which spews out more disinformation and misinformation than any other entity on this planet. Something that has 36,000 employees and is funded up the wazoo to the point where if you try and pull its funding, they'll put you in jail. They're going to fact check a geezer who sits on a chair having a conversation with other people. How about we do a fact check on the BBC's claims, I don't know, in Douma? Eh? How about we do a fact check on the BBC's claims, I don't know, in Xinjiang, in the province over there in China, where you said it was a genocide without providing a shred of evidence or a single photo of a dead body? How about we start doing fact checks on the BBC? Eh? No, they decide we're going to have a fact check, a fact check of Joe Rogan. Well, first of all, they say this: a vaccine can alter genes. Mr. Rogan said, "quote This is not a vaccine. This is essentially a gene therapy." Did you notice that they're just pulling one sentence? He has hours sitting down with people multiple times a week, hours saying, I mean, how many? He's talking half the time. And they'll take one sentence out and pluck it out. They'll forget everything else that was said before and afterwards, take one sentence and fact check that. And then they'll still get it wrong. They say none of the COVID vaccines change your genetic material or DNA, essentially the recipe book for containing the instructions of how to build your body. But he didn't say that, did he? He didn't say this was gene editing. He said it was gene therapy. Can't find it. He said it was gene therapy. And one of the vaccines, actually does say that. They say it's like, it's like exercise for your DNA, for your genes. So they're plucking one statement out and saying he's a purveyor of misinformation. Okay, all right. So let's go on to the next one. Ivermectin can cure COVID, he said. This one, Joe Rogan didn't even say. Four claims from his Spotify podcast. Okay, they're saying, all right, from his podcast. But Joe Rogan didn't say this. Somebody else on his platform said it. This claim was made on an episode last year featuring Brett Weinstein, an American author and professor of biology, who said ivermectin alone is capable of driving this pathogen to extinction. Well, first of all, although they say that's a misleading statement, all right, it may be misleading, I don't know, but you can't categorically say that it's right either. We don't know. It's too early. We're only 2 years into this. And you're jumping on this ivermectin thing, obviously the BBC are, because there's been this whole, furore over ivermectin. Ivermectin was one of the drugs that Joe Rogan took when he had COVID and he recovered from it. And he recovered from it in a matter of days. Ivermectin was one of the drugs that his doctor prescribed to him. Trying to make out here that he's spreading. Campaigners often cherry-pick positive examples and ignore the fact that many countries which relied heavily on ivermectin, like Brazil and Peru, had some of the worst death tolls from the virus. Well, you're cherry-picking that information as well, aren't you? You're cherry-picking those two examples. Do you see? The next claim, if you get vaccinated after having COVID, you're at greater risk of harmful side effects. Okay, one of Mr. Rogan's most controversial guests has been virologist Robert Malone. Robert Malone has patents for the to do with the mRNA vaccine. Do they mention that? It's Dr. Robert Malone, by the way. I noticed they did an article about John Campbell the other day, and it was just, they just said John Campbell. No, Dr. John Campbell. Mr. Malone, Dr. Malone, was banned from Twitter in December last year for violating its COVID misinformation policies. He appeared on Mr. Rogan's podcast shortly afterwards. Among the misleading claims made in his podcast episode was one suggesting people who were vaccinated after having COVID-19 are at greater risk of adverse side effects. Okay, so again, it's not settled science that all of this is wrong, and it's just best case guess scenario. Now here, they talk about the young people, the health risks from the vaccine are greater from COVID. Another statement, they say, Mr. Rogan said, I don't think it's true that there's an increased risk of myocarditis from people catching COVID-19 that are young versus the risk from the vaccine. This is something that he got wrong, supposedly, and then it turns out, no, he was right. You may remember it was a podcast, there was a clip, I've forgotten the name of the guy who was a podcast on, but he was fact-checked live, and some geezer was like, oh yeah, this guy won't be back on the Joe Rogan podcast anytime soon. And Joe Rogan was like, of course he will. You know, I love the guy. I couldn't think of somebody better to prove me wrong live on my podcast and make me look like an idiot. And then it turned out, oh, he was right, actually. The study he was looking at, the article that he was looking at from The Guardian, it actually was a study from the UK, I believe. Have they done it again? They've done it again. No, they haven't. I thought they did. Back to the Robert Malone thing. Look at this. Following his appearance, more than 270 doctors and healthcare professionals signed a letter to Spotify calling for COVID misinformation to be addressed. People in the chat right now are going to be looking at that and going, this is a fact check, remember. This is the BBC's fact check. This is the BBC fact check on misinformation to do with COVID. This is their fact check. And look at what they say. Following Dr. Malone's appearance, they didn't call him Dr. Malone, more than 270 doctors and healthcare professionals signed a letter to Spotify calling for COVID misinformation to be addressed. Really? Are you sure it was 270 doctors and healthcare professionals? Because that's something that's been debunked heavily. All of the mainstream media ran with it. Look, here's the Guardian's headline at the time. Menace to public health, they say. 270 doctors criticise Spotify over Joe Rogan's podcast. The BBC are using debunked information in their fact check on Joe Rogan. They weren't doctors. What was it they said? Doctors and healthcare professionals? They weren't doctors and healthcare professionals. Look, one of the signatories was a host and science correspondent of the Ologies podcast. One was a nurse practitioner. Over 100 of them, I believe, most of them, I believe, they weren't actually practicing medicine. They were doctors like, professors. Doctors in universities. Lexi Goldstein, medical resident. Leah Griffiths, psychologist. There's not an epidemiologist among them. Lindsay Schultz, public health advisor. A physician's assistant. Medical resident. A physician's, a senior communications consultant, one of them. This is the people that they're saying wrote a letter to Spotify condemning Joe Rogan for the misinformation. Isn't that misinformation itself? Saying that they were doctors and healthcare professionals when there was a handful full of people from podcasts in those signatories. There's about 50 students. Then they go on to say, for young people, the health risks from the vaccine are greater than from COVID. Again, they're cherry picking just small sentences from podcasts where he's having in-depth conversations with serious people People that the BBC won't talk to. The only people they'll talk to are official, people like Fauci. And even then, they won't hold his head to hold his feet to the fire. They won't. The BBC and Reuters and all these fact checkers, they won't fact check this. They won't fact check MSNBC, will they? They won't fact check all the lies that they put out there. Let's the BBC, that they could fact check their own reporting on Duma, their own reporting on Julian Assange, their own reporting on Russiagate, their own reporting on the Skripals. I can go on and on and on, couldn't I? And that's not misinformation, by the way, that they're accusing Joe Rogan of putting out. No. That's much worse, because they know what they're putting out is bullshit, but they're doing it anyway. That's not misinformation. That's disinformation. Listen to this from this crazy person. If it plays, of course. Come on, don't mess me up, man. Sorry about this, everybody. For some reason, it won't play. Bear me a second. Let's see if we can sort this out. Yeah, I don't know why that wouldn't play. That is weird.
It means that
I think this is it. I think this is the same clip.
It means that instead of the vaccine being able, instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person to person, spreading and spreading, sickening some of them, but not all of them. And the ones that it doesn't sicken don't know they have it. And then they give it to even more people because they didn't recognize they were, right? Instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person, potentially mutating and becoming more virulent and drug resistant along the way, now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person.
That is absolutely, unequivocally, 100% false. That's lies. It's complete and utter lies.
A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus. The virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else.
Total and utter complete nonsense. That is total and utter complete nonsense from somebody on a network. This is not somebody just sitting down and having a conversation for hours on end with a little Jamie, a guy called Jamie doing all the technical stuff. No. This is somebody getting paid $30,000 a day on the network on what was, it's not anymore, but what was the biggest news TV show in America. Do you think the BBC and Reuters and everybody are going to do a fact check on that crazy lady? Do you think they're going to do that? Who's doing more harm here? Who's putting out more lies and more misinformation? Joe Rogan or Rachel Maddow and MSNBC? Because honestly, I have got a back catalogue of the lies that this woman has been telling, especially on Russia, since 2016. Do you think anybody's doing a fact check on her? Do you think she's losing her Twitter account or her YouTube account for spreading misinformation? No, of course not. So why do you think they're doing it with Joe Rogan now? Well, it's because she, rightly so, has lost her audience. Nobody trusts her anymore. But Joe Rogan's getting 11 million downloads an episode. I want to repeat this. Just listen to this blatant bullshit.
It means that instead of the vaccine being able, instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person to person, spreading and spreading, sickening some of them, but not all of them, and the ones that it doesn't sicken don't know they have it, and then they give it to even more people because they didn't recognize they were, right? Instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person, potentially mutating and becoming more virulent and drug resistant along the way, now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person. A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus. The virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else. It cannot use a vaccinated person as a host to go get more people. That means the vaccines will get us to the end of this.
Literally everything that she just said was rubbish, was BS. And that video's still up on YouTube. They didn't get a strike for that. I've said it before, and I mean it. For everybody who calls for who called for the deplatforming of anybody, Joe Rogan now, but you know, this is just the latest guy. We told you, by the way, it wouldn't stop when it was Alex Jones. Remember, he was the guy. He was the canary in the coal mine. We told you that if you let them silence and deplatform Alex Jones, you know we're going to be next. But nobody's calling for her to be deplatformed. And I'm not, by the way. I don't think she should be deplatformed. I think she should, possibly face charges for an assault on journalism. But, I mean, I was just looking for the clip of Joe Biden on stage lying about about COVID. Just spreading lies. But Joe Rogan is the one who's got to be cancelled, look. She's only getting 2 million a show now. She's spreading those onto... But Joe Rogan's, he's... Because his guest said something on one of his shows? And they keep saying he spreads misinformation, and it's in the headline. You're just attaching Joe Rogan with misinformation in people's minds. People who don't watch him, they're going to get that impression. And the media know this is what they're doing. They know that this is the outcome. This is why they do it. A lot of it is like they can't help themselves. A lot of it is, this all they know. Just as a balance to that crazy lady, and as a balance to what the BBC... If you're not aware of who Joe Rogan is, I want you to listen to this, because this is his response to it all. And I want you to listen to, what this nutcase, what he's really like as a person. Listen to this.
Hello, friends. I wanted to make a video to address some of the controversy that's been going on over the past few days. And first of all, to say thank you to everyone that sent love and support. I truly, truly appreciate it. And it's been very nice to hear from you. I wanted to make this video, first of all, because I think there's a lot of people that have a distorted perception of what I do, maybe based on sound bites or based on headlines of articles that are disparaging. The podcast has been accused of spreading dangerous misinformation, specifically about 2 episodes, a little bit about some other ones, but specifically about 2. One with Dr. Peter McCullough and one with Dr. Robert Malone. Dr. Peter McCullough is a cardiologist, and he is the most published physician in his field in history. Dr. Robert Malone owns 9 patents on the creation of mRNA vaccine technology and is at least partially responsible for the creation of the technology that led to mRNA vaccines. Both these people are very highly credentialed, very intelligent, very accomplished people, and they have an opinion that's different from the mainstream narrative.
Compare and contrast that to that BBC article that I just showed you, where the BBC didn't even call the guy Dr. Robert Malone. They called him Mr. Malone. Compare and contrast how Joe Rogan, how he presents them to how the BBC present them. Who is actually spreading the misinformation here? Who's actually trying to, give the wrong opinion of things and manipulate opinion? Is it Joe Rogan or was it the BBC?
I wanted to hear what their opinion is. I had them on, and because of that, those episodes in particular, those episodes were labeled as being dangerous. They had dangerous misinformation in them. The problem I have with the term misinformation, especially today, is that many of the things that we thought of as misinformation just a short while ago are now accepted as fact. Like, for instance, 8 months ago, if you said, if you get vaccinated, you can still catch COVID and you can still spread COVID, you would be removed from social media. They would ban you from certain platforms. Now, that's accepted as fact. If you said, I don't think cloth masks work, you would be banned from social media. Now, that's openly and repeatedly stated on CNN. If you said, I think it's possible that COVID-19 came from a lab, you'd be banned from many social media platforms. Now, that's on the cover of Newsweek. All of those theories that at one point in time were banned were openly discussed by those 2 men that I had on my podcast that have been accused of dangerous misinformation. I do not know if they're right. I don't know, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. I'm just a person who sits down and talks to people and has conversations with them. Do I get things wrong? Absolutely, I get things wrong, but I try to correct them. Whenever I get something wrong, I try to correct it because I'm interested in telling the truth. I'm interested in finding out what the truth is. And I'm interested in having interesting conversations with people that have differing opinions. I'm not interested in only talking to people that have one perspective. That's one of the reasons why I had Sanjay Gupta on, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who I respect very much, and I really enjoyed our conversation together. He has a different opinion than those men do. I had Dr. Michael Osterholm on at the very beginning of the pandemic. He is on President Biden's COVID-19 advisory board. I had Dr. Peter Hotez on, who is a vaccine expert. I'm interested in finding out what is correct, and I'm also finding out how people come to these conclusions and what the facts are. Now, because of this controversy, and I'm sure there's a lot of other things going on behind the scenes with these controversies, but Neil Young has removed his music from the platform of Spotify, and Joni Mitchell and apparently some other people want to as well. I'm very sorry that they feel that way. I most certainly don't want that. I'm a Neil Young fan. I've always been a Neil Young fan. I'll tell you a story at the end of this about that. One of the things that Spotify wants to do that I agree with is that at the beginning of these controversial podcasts, like specifically ones about COVID, is to put a disclaimer and say that you should speak with your physician and that these people and the opinions that they express are contrary to the opinions of the consensus of experts, which I think is very important. Sure, have that on there. I'm very happy with that. Also, I think if there's anything that I've done that I could do better is have more experts with differing opinions right after I have the controversial ones. I would most certainly be open to doing that. And I would like to talk to some people that have differing opinions on those podcasts in the future. We'll see. I do all the scheduling myself, and I don't always get it right. These podcasts are very strange because they're just conversations. And oftentimes I have no idea what I'm going to talk about until I sit down and talk to people. And that's why some of my ideas are not that prepared or fleshed out, because I'm literally having them in real time. But I do my best, and they're just conversations. And I think that's also the appeal of the show. It's one of the things that makes it interesting. So I want to thank Spotify for being so supportive during this time. And I'm very sorry that this is happening to them and that they're taking so much heat from it. And so now the Neil Young story. When I first of all, I'm not mad at Neil Young. I'm a huge.
I don't think we need to talk about. I don't think we need to play the Neil Young story. But does that sound like somebody who's a purveyor of misinformation? Does that sound like somebody who's being reckless with the truth and reckless with lies and spreading? Of course not. It just seemed to me that the people who are talking about Joe Rogan being a spreader of misinformation right now are the only people who've never listened to him. He said something there. These are just conversations. His podcast is just conversations. That's it. He's just sitting down and talking with people. Trying to figure things out. And right now, seemingly the entire corporate world, including the BBC, wants to shut him up. Why is that, do you think? Why is it that the whole of the media seemingly want to shut Joe Rogan up right now? You just heard him. Doesn't sound like a crazy person at all, does he? The media, however, including all these shows, apart from Tucker Carlson, they were all lying about Russiagate constantly. Joe Rogan wasn't. Joe Rogan had on Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders, and even had on somebody actually who was investigating the Russian bots thing. While CNN and everybody were running around screaming, "Oh, Putin's installed the president." The BBC didn't do a fact check of any of that stuff, though, did they? No, of course not. People are threatened by him. And rightly so. Because you just heard him in his own words there. By the way, I don't think he apologised in that. People are saying, "Oh, he shouldn't have apologised." I didn't hear him apologise. Maybe he did. This is somebody who just wants to have a conversation and get better, who's got a curious mind. And the corporate media and the establishment at the moment are trying to shut down any conversations. You know, what sort of society do you live in? What sort of society do you live in if you can only have conversations upon approved lines and approved rhetoric? What sort of society do you live in if that's the case? Ask yourself that question. And if you know anybody who right now is saying that he should be shut down, explain to them why their head is just messed up. Explain, I don't know whether they got Trump derangement syndrome or what, and they can't see the woods for the trees, but censorship is never the answer, ever. Ever. And they're only trying to shut him down because having conversations, it seems, well, it's tyranny. Isn't it? You should use Wayback Machine to catch article edits as proof, says Blip Trooper. Yeah, I do sometimes. I do. I did it today with something. I am sure they changed that BBC changed that article. I will check on it. But they'd I did it on something else. There is one other thing I wanted to talk about quickly tonight, because this is kind of hilarious. I got to be honest. This whole this whole story. Let me just set it up. All right. So, if you stick around, if you are one of the people that have asked me about Bitcoin, I'm going to do a little thing at the end of this stream just to help you out. I'm not an expert on cryptocurrency, but I know some people don't trust many other people, so I'm going to do a little bit on this because this story is about Bitcoin. And you're going to love this story. You are going to love this story, I'm sure you are, because this is from 6 days ago. This is from the BBC. The IMF, that's the International Monetary Fund. Oh. Why can't I? Oh, there I am. The International Monetary Fund. So the International Monetary Fund have urged El Salvador to remove Bitcoin as legal tender. Okay. So the International Monetary Fund have said to El Salvador, yeah, you really need to stop using Bitcoin. The article says this: the International Monetary Fund has urged El Salvador to reverse its decision to make Bitcoin legal tender. In September, El Salvador became the first country to allow consumers to use the cryptocurrency in all transactions alongside the US dollar. The decision led to large-scale protests over fears it will bring instability and inflation to the impoverished Latin American country. Yeah, because, you know, the IMF, their loans never lead to instability and inflation in Latin American countries, do they? You know, it's so funny. Bitcoin is about, and I love this sentence, Bitcoin has lost about half its value since November. Really? They always say it in a negative way, don't they? It's lost about half its value since November. Really? Well, Bitcoin has increased about £30,000 in value over the last 10 years. In fact, it's outperformed every stock out there, including Tesla, by an absolute mile. You didn't say that in your article, though, did you, BBC? They carry on, they say. The IMF has warned President Nayib Bukele, we'll get to this legend in a second, of the risks the cryptocurrency poses the country, stressing that it would be difficult to get a loan from the institution. The whole point of El Salvador doing this, of establishing Bitcoin as legal tender in their country, is to get off the IMF, is to not need the IMF. The IMF will give these countries loans for sure. They say, yes, we are the International Monetary Fund. You can have a loan. But the way you pay that loan back is by cutting public services, is with austerity, is with, letting the American corporations come in and start raping your economy and seeing your wealth of your country just fly out of its borders. It's kind of like, imagine being hooked on heroin. Imagine being hooked on heroin and then thinking, you know what, I'm getting a bit pissed off with this heroin lark. It's not very good, and it's causing me financial disability. It's causing me personal instability. I'm going to stop having heroin. And in this case, the IMF or the drug dealer coming to that person who's just quit heroin, going, "Are you sure you want to quit heroin? Because you won't be able to get any of this good heroin we've got. If you quit heroin, you won't be able to get any of this good heroin we got." And the BBC present it as if this is terrible. And this is the El Salvador have got to just ditch Bitcoin as legal tender because otherwise they won't be able to get loans from the IMF. The board's directors have now, quote, urged the authorities to narrow the scope of Bitcoin law by removing Bitcoin's legal tender status, according to the statement. They highlighted the blah, 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 blah. The president of El Salvador responded to that with this meme. That's El Salvador talking to Bitcoin while the IMF is in the background dancing and saying, "Look at me, look at me." The purpose of El Salvador using Bitcoin as legal tender anywhere in the country was to make the IMF irrelevant. That was the point of it. Now the IMF are saying to them, are you sure about this? Because you're making us irrelevant. And the BBC present that news report as if it's a bad thing. The latest is El Salvador have obviously rejected, the IMF, rejected their calls to drop Bitcoin use. This is from the Independent, just the same as the BBC. I could show you any number of articles. They're written pretty much the same as the BBC are. All scary. Oh, be very, very careful. It's the future. It's unstoppable, really. I suppose it changes their funding model, doesn't it, in the media? What they're not telling you often is where you've got to look. Like I say in this article, they're not telling you there Bitcoin has increased in value exponentially, has outperformed any stock since its inception. Even Tesla, it's just blown it out the water. I mean, it was what, £10 or $50 just 8 years ago, whatever it is, and even it hit £51,000 at the height earlier this year, and yeah, it's dropped half its value. But as a store of value, if you bought it when it was $50 or $4,000, you're sitting pretty right now. And if you bought it as $1, as many people did, you're sitting even prettier. And it's dropped massively in value over the last few weeks. Well, last few months, actually, Bitcoin has. So some people will say it's a good time to buy. El Salvador, they're buying lots of it. And you know what? It's making waves around the world, and this is going to scare a lot of people. Because Erdogan, just a week before, met the president of El Salvador. Erdogan's economy and the Turkish economy, he's got hyperinflation right now, and he's really struggling. And he's running out of options. And he's meeting El Salvador's Bitcoin boosting leader amid an economic crisis, according to the Wall Street Journal. Don't know what that could mean there. Do you? What could it mean? What could it mean? Is it worth buying silver and gold? It's always worth buying gold. Although Bitcoin is outperforming it. Yeah. Okay. Well, while I'm here, I think I can. I think I can show you this. No, I've got to verify something. Okay. I'm going to do that at a different time. I'm going to put a little video together of how I would buy crypto. I'll have to do. I've got to blank out information you see on the video. If you are going to buy any crypto, I would suggest the best thing for you to do is and the easiest way to do it, and the safest way, the easiest and safest, I would say, is go to Coinbase.com or get the app on your phone and do it that way. You have to link your bank account to Coinbase, and it's pretty straightforward to buy Bitcoin from there, or any currency that they deal in. But once you have got your Bitcoin from Coinbase. If that's where you can buy it from Binance or other places as well. Coinbase is what I suggest. If you do that, I will suggest you don't keep the money in a Coinbase wallet. There's a saying, I've forgotten this, I'm probably going to butcher the saying, I know I am. But there's a saying if you don't hold the keys, you don't hold the crypto. If you don't hold the keys, you don't hold the Bitcoin. And the reason they say that is because Coinbase, they can rate the whole point of buying Bitcoin is freedom, is to say, screw you. You can't seize it. If something, they could seize your bank account right now. The government could. They can't, and if you have a wallet at Coinbase, they could seize that too. Or they could do something. The government and the authorities could put through some sweeping legislation on Bitcoin that could ban you buying it through your bank, or even freeze it at Coinbase. I remember as an old poker player who played online a hell of a lot. That I remember people who got caught with, one person was $60,000+ in his account that he couldn't get an online account through NetTeller. He couldn't get, because President Obama on Black Friday decided to ban all offshore betting sites that were dealing with poker, because he wanted the tax revenue. If the government decide to do something like that, and you've got money at Coinbase or Binance, and they decide to do something at Coinbase or Binance to say that you can't get your money, you won't be able to get your money because you don't hold the keys to the wallet. So once you've bought your crypto from Coinbase, what I suggest you do is invest in something like this. Don't get it from Amazon. Okay? Don't get it from Amazon. Don't buy anything from Amazon. Tell Amazon to go do one. But get something like this, this is your own vault, if you like. And even if you get something like this and you lose it, you still will have your crypto. You'll still be able to get at it, because you need both the keys and the wallet, basically. And if Coinbase, if they've got your money, you don't hold the wallet. You understand? So you need something like this. This is what we've got, and it's great. You can hold all sorts of cryptocurrency in that. Other than that, there's pretty much no other advice I could give you. I could probably talk you through the process on Coinbase of linking your bank account to it, but honestly, it's pretty straightforward. And you should be able to, with this, you should be able to go ahead and buy some. And it's like it's less than 30 grand at the moment. Bitcoin is, that's in pounds. So some would say it'd be a good time to buy. Although I will say it will go down as well. But yeah, treat it like gold. It's a store of value at the moment. Although with El Salvador, and now maybe even other countries, who knows where it could go. I think that's it, everybody. I think that's me done for the evening. I hope you've enjoyed these little streams. I do enjoy going live and saying hello to everybody. Tarsan Turkey says, Bitcoin tokens look like gold. Yeah, treat Bitcoin like gold. Treat it as a store of value. And obviously it's outperforming gold if you look over the last few years. But gold is declining in value, and many people are saying that's because people are selling gold to buy Bitcoin. I wouldn't know about that. But Tarsan Turkey says, Bitcoin tokens look like gold. Ethereum tokens look like silver. Gold and silver rumours are that these are supposed to have a future equivalent value of 100k for gold and 10k for silver. Could be similar. Well, I mean, if it goes to 100k Bitcoin, yeah, that's tripling from where it is now. I mean, if you bought it when it was 1,000 or 2,000, whatever, then you're sitting pretty. I personally, my opinion is 100,000 is a low estimate. I think it will go higher than that, 150, 200 maybe. But that's, like I say, it's just my opinion. All right. That's it, everybody. Mousy Brown says, as usual, Oz Whistles and RSFO are on top of it all. Oz Whistles and RSFO are great, that is for sure. I can't say in my mid-70s I'm trying to plan a survival garden for 2022, a survival guide 2022. Free Julian Assange. Yes, I echo those words. Free Julian Assange. All right, everybody. I think that's it. I think I'm out of here. As always, support independent media. Please go to the website and drop me some pennies at paypal.me FJ Supplies. I can't do this without your support, and I really appreciate every support and every pound you can spare. So thank you very much, and I shall be back very, very soon for another live stream and more videos, etc., and TikToks over the next few days. Take care, everybody. Stay curious.